Because what you essentially have is the best practices of slow memorial Kettering now being applied to a third world country and helping them diagnose and provide a treatment for cancer. All right? I think that's very important, and I think it shows what can happen in terms of democratizing, decision making as you put those into these systems. Sales assistants. Inside Sales is a company that's been doing sales enablement for a long time and making recommendations to telemarketers. So they actually have a program they built again on top of AI technologies. They don't call it AI technologies, they actually call it neurolytics. But it functions the same way. It takes 200 different data signals and provides a next best action for that telemarketer to try to get you to buy something. All right? So you can blame inside sales the next time you get a telemarketer call it. You actually have to buy that thing that they suggested. All right. A lot of folks have heard of Palantir. Palantir is kind of a secretive company, well known in the investigative area, and they actually have a lot of capabilities for doing threat analysis and investigation analysis, hooking together lots of different signals coming from video, audio, speech, text, connecting all those things together, and then making recommendations. And then, I think this is my last example, risk management. It's financial risk management. So what this is really about is traders potentially doing bad things, all right? Communicating with other people doing inside trading or letting information secrets out, things like that. Digital Reasoning their program actually monitors those kinds of signals and actually alerts the decision makers to when those signals are actually happening inside of the financial trading organization. All right. So we talked a little bit about the technologies that make up a cognitive system. One of the things that I worked on earlier this year was actually identifying those top technologies for a cognitive system. Everything from cloud processing and knowledge-based curation to that question and answer processing. And then what we did at IDC is we placed it on an adoption scale. And then we started to talk about how it's being implemented, all right? So, for example, we also identified it in terms of transformational technologies or incremental technologies or opportunistic technologies. And what this is really all about is providing a guide to cognitive system developers to start thinking about what technologies they should be using to build a cognitive application. So cognitive isn't only about the written word. It isn't only about machine learning or structured data. It's also about images and video. All right? So, for example, what we're starting to see is deep learning techniques that actually can identify people and which paths they're going. So in this particular case, we've identified people that are actually moving and what their essential path is going to be. All right? In this example, we're identifying people, but you'll notice that there's posts over there that look very similar to those people, but that the program actually can differentiate between those posts and the actual people. All right? So, and the way this is done is through what they call deep neural networks, all right, that are actually performing deep learning, all right, and that actually, over time, it teaches itself to recognize which are people and which are posts. The interesting thing about a lot of the deep neural network technology, at least, and maybe the gentleman after me can explain it a little bit better, but my understanding is that people don't really know why deep neural networks work the way they do. They just do. All right? And if you construct them enough, the theoretical basis is not really all that well known yet. All right? In another case, we've got image, so we can identify different pieces, somebody falling down, luggage left separately. And then last but not least, this has become almost, simple. Recognizing a license plate and keeping track of this. There's actually a town, I was reading about a town in Long Island where the town chief, police chief, decided that he was going to put these cameras up at all of his entrances into his town, and he was tracking all of the license plates going in and out of his town. All right? And somebody said, well, why are you doing this? Well, we want to know in case somebody does a crime. So that's the downside of this. One thing that you have to know, we talk about data, all right? What data is being collected? What personal data of yours is being collected? Where is it being collected? Where is it being stored? All of those types of things are becoming fodder. Yes?
Yes, am I reading it wrong, or is that alert giving an incorrect license plate, an extra 9 in what it says versus what the license plate says?
No, it's
Because it has 3999.
no,
I'm sorry,
there's-
I retract it. It's
yeah, no, there's two in there.
Okay,
But, I mean, it's a great point. Not all these things are perfect. So there are some percentage of, statistics where something actually goes wrong. In terms of the cognitive process, people ask me about, how does this actually work? So we talk a little bit about how the content is ingested, information and knowledge is extracted. We add that to the knowledge base. We then build those statistical models. The interaction with the model begins to create learning over time. We answer questions or we make predictions. The model is revised via user feedback. So in this particular case, we actually have the users providing some level of supervision in here. All right, and then it's a continuous circle, as we mentioned. So in terms of those vendors, this is a list of the vendors that we've got. And we track this information, at IDC. We estimated that there's about $1 billion in cognitive software platform revenue in 2015. All right. Our forecast is it'll be almost $4 billion by 2019, with a compound annual growth rate in excess of 35%. All right. So that's pretty good, but it's not going to set the world on fire. All right. Then we've got people who aren't actually cognitive software vendors, but they're actually embedding cognitive technologies in their applications. And this is a much bigger list, and I just have a representative. So Lockheed is out there, SAIC, Google. I talked about Google doing the deep learning. I talked about Facebook having machine learning in their algorithms to show you what they should be showing in their news feed. Baidu's doing all sorts of things around shopping and all sorts of different applications. Microsoft is doing a lot of work in this area. Apple's doing a lot of very secretive work that they won't talk about. Walmart actually went out and bought a company, and that's now Walmart Labs, to do cognitive and AI, because they were getting beaten to death by Amazon. So they figured the only way they were going to compete was actually by doing cognitive applications themselves. All right, Yahoo and Hitachi and Salesforce, on and on and on. There's also a really heavy-duty market for acquisitions. All right. So this is just a partial list. You can see the companies up here: Google, Microsoft, Facebook, IBM, Salesforce. And I was just seeing something on the order of there was another $400 million spent this quarter on investments, all right, for AI-based companies. So we haven't really talked about, intelligent office and personal assistants. We've really been talking about work-enabled applications. But what about that? Well, how many people use Office 365? Okay, we got a few people. All right. Inside of SharePoint in Office 365, there's something called Microsoft Delve. And Microsoft Delve automatically surfaces content. So if I start working on a marketing presentation for next year's product, all right, Delve automatically says, well, geez, the guy over in Holland did a similar project 2 years ago. You might be interested in his PowerPoint presentation. Or Joe works on marketing applications, all right, but he works for a different division, all right? But we know that he's talked a lot about that in Skype and in his emails, all right? So the idea is it's actually looking at all of that information and building a knowledge graph and then provides that information to you as you go about your daily day, all right? Google has OK Google and Google Now. They've announced Google Assistant, which will be their artificial intelligence tool. Apple Siri, I think everybody's very familiar with Apple Siri. You know, 4 years ago it started out being a joke. Everybody, all people wanted to do was actually make fun of what the Siri could do. But a lot of people actually use Siri today, all right? So it's actually a useful tool in what's happened over 4 years. It's not as far as some of the other tools out there. And Apple's falling behind, but it's still moved a long ways in 4 years. Now this is where it gets interesting. Cognitively enabled applications, those things that Greg is developing, what other people are developing, what those, you know, what is it, IBM has what, 4,000 partners now? Something like that? That's what those partners are developing, mostly, is cognitively enabled applications for all sorts of different things. That, we are estimating, is going to be a tool to help you target and do a better job of predicting which groups are going to buy my products, all right? And that's part of their Adobe Marketing Cloud. So we're going to see this cognitively enabled application, you know, become, you know, more or less ubiquitous over the next 5 to 10 years. Now we have developed a spending guide that looks at 20 different use cases. We've got forecasts for the different technologies involved and things like that. But I think what's important for you to remember is the $40 billion number. The other thing that we've got that's really interesting is, you know, what verticals are actually beginning to adopt cognitive systems. This is a survey we ran this June. And you can see that already deployed is the dark blue, planning or currently evaluating is the light blue, and then the gray is, hey, we don't care, we're not considering it, okay? So banking, security investment, telecommunications, process manufacturing, resource industries, and professional services are those ones that are looking at it now. And what's really interesting is that banking and securities investment services, who we would think of as the most conservative of industries, is one of the leaders in actually implementing these. And why is that? Well, we don't hear about it, but they're getting beaten by the criminals day in and day out, okay? For fraud investigation, they're losing money, the ATMs. This is a way to combat that. This is a way to fight back. And that's why a lot of these are actually being adopted. So the top 3 industries that our forecast says, you know, where we're going to be seeing banking, what we talked about, healthcare, and then retail. All right, why retail? Well, shopping advisors. Amazon's been doing this now for, well, I don't know, what, 3 years, 4 years? You know, if your friends like this, you know, maybe you should like that. Well, how do you know which one to actually, which friends? Well, it turns out it's probably an automated friend. Okay? All right. You know, Amazon's out there doing this. All right. Today, IBM, actually Macy's announced that they have a new product called Macy's On Call, which uses IBM Watson to actually help you determine what Macy's product you should be buying.
Dave?
Yeah.
Percentage of what on the prior slide? Banks, I guess, all banks, healthcare. I'm not, what's in the?
It's the percentage is that overall percentage of that $40 billion
Oh, the money, not companies.
of the spend.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. But thanks, it took me a while to remember what I was talking about. So those leading use cases, well, like we talked about in fraud and investigation, threat intelligence and prevention for banking, those are the 2 big ones. Diagnosis and treatment systems for healthcare. The merchandising, as we talked about for omnichannel operations. Customer service is a big opportunity. How many people hate IVR systems. All right, yeah, do you know what an IVR system is? Okay, it's voice response, interactive voice response. When you get one of those recordings on the phone that says, say, press 1 or press 2, all right, how many people hate those? All right, yeah, okay, that's me too. All right, if we build a cognitively enabled system, all right, we can get rid of those and we can dump those IVR systems. All right, so we can actually ask relevant questions and have those relevant questions actually answered by an automated agent. That's where people are starting to spend their money for customer service. Some other predictions here, I won't go through all these, but we see that that the CPG and the consumer packaged goods or retail sales, that having cognitive applications is actually going to help reduce costs, food costs. All right? Whether those food costs actually get passed on to us or not, who knows? But it's going to help reduce the food costs because we'll have better supply, we'll have better logistics, we'll have better optimization, all those kinds of things. We're expecting that 2/3 of manufacturers will use cognitive systems to drive more optimization, all right, for supply and demand. And we're already starting to see that, all right? Physicians, we already talked about that aspect of it. Transportation management, we're one of the biggest problems in transportation is managing loads, figuring out where loads should go and things like that. There's some pretty hairy logistics applications going on right now. Being able to apply deep learning and machine learning to that automatically is going to help optimize that and increase our costs, or increase the efficiencies around getting things transported. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is those data vendors. All right, we're also starting to see a market for companies actually selling data for data models. So IBM is doing it, Oracle is doing it, Twitter is doing it, Google is starting to do it with some of their data, LinkedIn is definitely doing it with Microsoft, all right? And then there's a bunch of personal information companies like Axiom and IRI that are doing that as well, all right? So there's an emerging market for that data component that we talked about as part of these cognitive applications. So in terms of the last thing here is for building one of these smart applications, what should you be thinking about? Well, do you know where your data is? All right? Do you know what your organization is spending on data? Do you know where that data is organized? Do you know how it relates to other data? All right? Where are my subject matter experts? Because your subject matter experts are the persons that are going to help you build that cognitive application. All right? One of the most important things is if you're not an organization that embraces information as an asset, all right, you're not going to succeed. All right? Information is, the coin of the trade or coin of the realm for cognitive applications. All right? So you need to have that kind of effort. And I find it very interesting that all the companies that do publishing or publish their annual results or their quarterly results, they never talk about their data assets. How should data assets be monetized? Should they be be monetized and considered at the same as the plants or the trucks that they own? Isn't the data just as important or more important? And then, we obviously want to use those technologies we talked about. And then the last thing is, my gosh, develop metrics for measuring when you're successful and when you're not. Measure your before and measure your after. I can't tell you how many folks I've talked to that aren't doing that. All right, they'll start one of these projects and they say, "Oh, was it a success?" Well, we really don't know. All right, because they didn't measure the before, and they're not measuring the after. All right. So unless you can develop those metrics ahead of time as part of the planning process, I think it's going to be more difficult for you to get that next project approved. So with that, I'll pass it on to, Greg, is there time for questions?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Any questions? Yes, sir.
The slides will be available to us?
Yeah, the slides are going to be made available.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Do you know if any guidance has been given to valuing data by the FASB, or the International Accounting Standards Boards, for like some rough measure to, I mean, it's very subjective, but
I
is
know-
there anything out there?
I know that the subject has been raised. Okay, the question was, has the Financial Accounting Standards Boards or any kind of other accounting boards looked at the value of data, all right, and trying to figure out how to value data. And as far as I know, I think the subject's been raised, but I don't think that there's been an answer yet, all right? So, you know, I think it's something that hopefully we'll see more of. And I actually saw a Harvard Business Review article about it about 6 months ago, saying that this is something we need to do. Because, you know, so many companies today, you think they're manufacturing companies. You think John Deere is a manufacturing company, manufacturing agricultural equipment. No, they're a data company. They're selling data about how to actually, you know, plant crops and keep those crops going, and they're selling that back to the farmer. They're an information company, all right? And the tools that they've got are just an ends to a means, the means to the end of actually helping them produce better crop yields.
But is it even being carried as an intangible? Or is it
In
just
some
not,
companies,
it's not
I think,
even, it's not
I think
even
some,
there?
I think some companies are carrying it as an intangible, but a lot of companies aren't carrying it at all. Any other questions? Yes.
At the very beginning, you said that basically knowledge workers can't keep up with any of this anymore. I think we're a room full of knowledge workers, so what's your advice for us to kind of keep up with this kind of stuff and keep our skills relevant?
You know, it's an interesting question. My colleague Vanessa Thompson and I have been writing about the automation of work and collaboration and how those things. And there's tools that are starting to come out. So, for example, there's Slack bots, you know, that people are starting to look at. There's, you know, tools and things. I think one of the things you should be thinking about is how can I get better at collecting and organizing my own information so that I have a good handle on it. All right, and then how can I, you know, potentially use that within the organization? You know, are there tools that I should be promoting to my management that they should be thinking about? More ways of automating, you know, our knowledge work and things like that for you to be more productive. So, I mean, I would recommend, you know, just kind of general purpose awareness, and also, you know, have your eyes open about the various tools that are going on in the marketplace, all right, and what's coming along. I think Dell, for example, is a great tool for Microsoft Office. I know that the other vendors are developing similar tools. You know, I think IBM is looking at different things for, you know, around Verse and things along that line. So I think, you know, there are tools that people are going to be able to have, all right? And I also think that the Google Assistant will help raise the level when it comes out sometime over the next year, all right? Yes?
So you were talking about cognitive computing applications and securities and investment. Are there any specific examples you can quote? Or do these companies build their applications on their own, or do they outsource it to a different?
So a lot of the securities and trading companies are very tight-lipped about, you know, anything they're doing in cognitive applications and machine learning applications. For example, 3 years ago, I saw a presentation about how a professor was using natural language processing on Twitter and machine learning to actually identify potential trading situations where they could actually make a trade 2 or 3 minutes before you know, something actually hit based on the Twitter stream. All right. That company that lady got hired by one of the largest financial research companies, and the rest of her research was buried. All right. So, you know, I've talked to a number of financial companies, but most are doing everything under non-disclosure. They're very secretive about it. You know, everybody views their potential intellectual property as proprietary and game-changing, and so they don't really want to share it. So there's very little public information I can share. You know, it is going on. A lot of it's going on. You know, but we just don't really know to what extent. All right.
Yeah, I have another question. Like, So then IDC is into consulting, right? So it's basically like consulting for different technologies related to cognitive applications. Do you think like in the future, like, these cognitive applications can replace consultants?
Yes, I do. I think at some point that it will replace, at least the research component of consultants, all right? And we'll start to see, advisory applications and things like that, going on. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but, it's early days. I mean, one of the things you gotta be careful about here is that, when Elon Musk talks or Stephen Hawking talks, they're talking about general AI, all right? And, fearful of general AI. Everything I've talked about here is very specific, what I call narrow AI, task-based AI, all right? And I think we're being relatively successful with narrow AI today. I think general, broad-based AI, I think we're a ways away from seeing what that is, but yes.
So as these systems continue to give more advice to more people, including doctors and patients regarding cancer, but more generally, you may not have the answer on that one system. Are they also giving some estimate or information about the level of certainty the program has about it? Because it's so easy. People, experts or semi-experts, often will come across as more certain of something than they really are. They think they're giving good information, but they're not positive, but someone listening to them. So the same thing about these systems. I think if we lose sight of the level of confidence and maybe a way to trace back to some of the key reasoning points, we're losing a lot that eventually, we'll have a house of cards with nothing inside.
Right. One of the things I like about the Watson Oncology solution is it does give a confidence level. And then the other thing it also does, if the doctor asks for it, it'll actually give him all of the evidence that provided the solution to actually do that. And I think there are some best practices that we're going to have to look at. I think, the other thing we're going to have to be concerned about is, that first AI that kills somebody, based on some kind of advice or some kind of recommendation, what's the liability and who has the liability? So, hate to leave out a downer, but,
All right, well, thank you, David.